Hello and welcome everyone to the Swedish Film Institute's seminar during the European Film Market at Berlinale. And I'm so happy to almost see you all. We have a free seminar today, and we will as well make it available after the seminar. This seminar is based on our latest report in regards of gender equality and a more inclusive film industry. We have decided at the Swedish Film Institute that to make change, we need more knowledge and we need more tools. So the report is the knowledge, and now we come to the tools. This time I have the great privilege to introduce to you Effie Brown, CEO and your previous producer for many years, but now CEO and co-owner, what I understand, of Gamechangers film based in LA, which is a film finance and development company that is dedicated, as you say, to groundbreaking narratives that disrupt the status quo and advance the cultural conversation. You want to work with women, people of color, LGBTQ+, and different abilities or disabilities, if you want to say that. And on your side, we have Dr. Emilia Roig. You are a political science researcher. You've written a lot of books, theses. Your thesis was about the intersectional process in regards on discrimination on the labor market in France and Germany. And you also do a lot of teaching and workshop game-changing things. So I'm so happy to have you here. And Effie, you also write on your webpage, we don't want no black poverty porn, no white saviors, no burying the queer, no girl who becomes whole when she finds the right guy, no ableism on screen or on set. Doesn't everyone want to work with you?
I hope so. I hope so. But what I thought it was really, thank you so much for that intro. I have to say, I found it really, my company, we found it really pertinent to put that on the website because we were so used to seeing a certain type of film and a certain type of story that it normalized the stereotype. So for us, we wanted to bring a different type of hero living a regular type of life and making it, more accessible, I guess you could say. We're looking to make a new kind of hero. And it was just interesting to be like, because people are like, oh, take this movie, do this. And we're like, I'm not doing the black poverty porn. I'm not doing the white savior movie. And when you say those stereotypes are no longer allowed or you're not looking for them, some people, it gets, you hear the sound of crickets when they're like, who? Because they realize that that's all that they've been sort of putting out there, that they too have turned tone deaf to that type of movie. Sorry, say that again?
Did you come across with this message? I mean, did the independent filmmakers, I guess, or did the Hollywood industry come running to you to understand what kind of groundbreaking work you do?
Well, I don't say that. I would like to say that the Hollywood industry as a whole has been more inclusive and embracing of these different types of narratives. What's happening in Hollywood now is that it's becoming distasteful and becoming acknowledged that these stereotypes are tropes. And it's really probably, we call them more like film tropes, are unacceptable, that these film tropes are really uplifting a patriarchal and white supremacist sort of society and, and entertainment. And now people are realizing that there's another way to go, and inclusivity and diversity is it.
Yeah, and Emilia, from your point of view, and I know you've done so many studies, and you've been now, I mean, you must be the biggest mascot in the whole film industry of the change part, because you're really invited to everything. But we are so happy that you're here with us as well. But why is it so important to get away from the stereotypes, would you say? What is the most important take on that?
Okay, so first of all, thank you as well very much for your invitation and also for the generous introduction. And I'm very happy to be here with Effie Brown on this panel. So I would say it's absolutely necessary to break with stereotypes, because those stereotypes tell a story. They tell a narrative that upholds our global social hierarchy, that puts dominant groups on the top, and that creates an illusion of superiority and inferiority. And so all those stories basically justify oppression. They justify the fact that some of us are on the top and others are at the bottom and everything in between. And so that's why we need to work on these stereotypes, because that's the story we take on from a very early age. So the power of the film industry is such that it's playing a tremendous role in upholding this hierarchy. So it also has the possibility, it has the ability to dismantle this hierarchy, to dismantle those stories, and to represent the diversity of the world in which we live without putting individuals into hierarchy. So I can give an example, for example, of how poverty is usually depicted. And that's a very good example, because poverty is depicted as something that happens because people make the wrong choices, because they have an addiction, because they are not motivated, not hardworking. And so this is a stereotype about poverty, for example. And so when we tell this story over and over again, then it justifies poverty, and it says, okay, well, some people are poor because somehow they're not working hard enough, or because they're not making the right choices. So it prevents us from trying to look at a system that is intrinsically unfair, that has been for so many years, so many centuries, and it just upholds the status quo. So that's why we need to work on that.
And Effie, I mean, I guess you recognize a lot of that. But now when you're in this making of films where you really want to break the stereotypes, you also, you're very clear in that you want the investors to be women and people of color and disabled. Why is that important? Why is ownership important? Has that to do with the same thing as Emilia said?
Yes, it really does. And Dr. Emilia, I have to say that was beautifully put. Beautifully put. You're going to probably, if you Google me later on, you're going to hear me say the same thing that you just said. So I'm going to give you your homage now. So thank you for that. That was beautifully put.
Same to you.
It's really important, to go back into an entrepreneurial leverage and ownership stake, because a lot of times in filmmaking, people don't realize that they are going, like a filmmaker will go to someone who is of the dominant culture or someone who doesn't know their experience and asking permission to have their story told, to be validated in the way of like, is my voice good enough? Will you give me money so my voice can be heard? And what I wanted to do is I wanted for us to take ownership, for women, people of color, LGBTQ plus, and people with disability, to be able to have that ownership and to be able to have that agency and be able to tell our own stories and be a part of. Because a lot of this business, and this might not be the proper time, but the film business is really predicated off of finances and return on investment and money. And a lot of times, and even now where people are doing films of color, the people who are profiting from these films are not people of color. They're not women. They're still being made by the dominant culture, who are taking the check and giving these people like a little bit of a pittance. So if we're able to take ownership and be able to have a space at the table, that is where I feel true change can happen. That is where I feel that we can dismantle this systemic racism and misogyny and ableism that has been normalized in our industry. And I want to say that I think people want to change. I don't think that this is like a malicious thing. I just think people are just used to doing it this way, that it's hard to sort of turn them and be like, and do another way. That's my feeling.
Yeah, and now you're actually tuning in, Emilia, so well. So I will I will wait with my question to you, how you do when people don't have money to invest, which is often the case of women don't have that much money. People of color are, we are talking about the big groups that didn't get the money. So how do you get them to start to get the money? But what you just described as unconscious biased state of mind that I think you described. You, Emilia, you work a lot with groups to make change, and I've been lucky enough to be part of your workshops, and there are so many different levels of people in those groups. Usually, that's my experience in any group, that there are people that are very unconscious biased, and there are people that are really conscious. And what is can you help people that want to start off? Because it's not easy to break the ice and start working together when we start off from so different starting positions.
Was that a question for me or for Effie?
Yes. What could you help someone who wants to start doing change and faces this challenge of different levels of unconscious bias? What can they do? What would you advise them to do?
So first of all, what you're doing already, trying to bring attention to those issues, and also really raising awareness and starting the conversation, which, I know in Europe, it's not a conversation we're having, so I'm looking at the US, and of course, I'm not suggesting that, it's perfect or anything like that. Of course not, otherwise you wouldn't be doing the amazing work you're doing, Effie. But in Europe, we really have an issue speaking about race and speaking about racism and speaking about oppression, because we do not understand the systemic aspect. And so people who want to do that need to first understand. So I think the first step that we need to take is to recognize, to acknowledge that we have a problem. Acknowledge that there have been inequalities, that there have been erasures, that there have been stereotyping, and this is a very violent system. So when we start by recognizing this, then we can start working on it. So, what Effie was saying as well about the fact that producers need to, we need to also understand the capitalist game behind it. We need to understand that the film industry is also embedded in the capitalist system. And the capitalist system is resting on these hierarchies, in order to allocate power. And so that's why as soon as we unveil the system, as soon as we understand it, and people in positions of power understand that, then I feel like we open a door for change. But that's not enough, because any long-lasting deep social change also takes time. So it means that it's not only people in positions of power that would need to impact the change, because the change is coming from the bottom all the time. You will never see social change happening from the top and people in positions of power thinking, okay, we need to stop this. That's why there needs to be a way to channel this energy and to make them understand, look, you don't have a choice anymore. We're in 2021 now. You cannot have those roles. You're not credible. And so that's about the roles and the stereotypes. But then how do we do to make sure that the money is ending, or is not staying concentrated in the hands of a few people? That's another question. I haven't answered it myself, but I think if we have more and more awareness and sensitivity and intolerance for injustice, this might change.
Effie, I mean, you are really an intersectional, openly intersectional company. But this capitalism or class issue, does that come across clearly in your company? How do you do to get to involve people that are not only women, Black, but very many are not very well situated, so they don't have the money? How do you do?
That's so interesting, and thank you for asking that. And Dr. Emilia, you are amazing. Here's what, and I'm just going to riff off of what both of you are saying for a minute. people, but when like, I want to just sort of hit off of when Dr. Emilia said, change comes from the bottom, because people who are dominant, who have the money, are not like, you know what, today we're going to be equal. Today we're going to let, everybody have their say. It doesn't happen, right? It doesn't happen.
It doesn't.
Until people are like, you know what, I've had enough. And that's one thing here in the US. We've gotten to that tipping point of like, enough is enough. This is a country, and I love America. I'm like, woo-ha, I love America. But this is a country that was built on the attempted genocide of a people with Native Americans. This is a country that was literally based off of colonialism and slavery. That's how this country got its start. So, and I think that and we had to really, as a country be like, hey guys, this country was really made off of genocide, attempted genocide, and slavery. So until we got to that point of oh, right, which is why we were able to see, I don't want to get into who our president was, but we had, the civil unrest and the potential takeover of the government. We as a country have hit that tipping point of, hey guys, we have a problem. And the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we turn on to see now need to be different. And I, for one, am trying something different where, I'm not an economics major. I don't know, I can't talk about Wall Street, but I do know money, and I do know how to make a movie. And I do know how to make a profit from a movie. And I want to make sure that I actually go to people who are marginalized or the other to make that happen. Because what people, and this is so interesting because you sort of alluded to it of saying, well, women, people of color, and people with disability and LGBTQ, they're oftentimes not well situated to give money. And that's where I go, not true. That is our internalized bias to be like, well, we can't afford that. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Because all of us coming together, putting whatever little monies we have together, make up a budget, and then we can make a movie and have the ownership and the leverage. So that's what we're doing. And a lot of what I'm doing at Gamechanger is that we're educating potential financiers. You don't have to be a billionaire or a millionaire, but if you have $10,000, $20,000, $500, we can make things happen together collectively. That's how we win. And that has always been our strength. If you think about it, women, people of color, LGBTQ, people with disability, we know how to mount up and be like, let's work together. So I don't want to take up too much time, but that I'm really passionate about it. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing now. And it's working really well. And just a quick shout out to our allies, because we do have, and I love them, we do have our straight white men who are 1%ers, who are also a part of this group, who also see the need for everybody to rise up together. So I also want to give a shout out to them as well, just because it takes all of us. It's not us against them. It's really being we're going to handle our own as well, and be able to bring people along with us. That's it.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I think that you summarized. Yeah, go ahead, Emilia.
Sorry, Anna, please go ahead.
No, but I think that we have summarized it pretty well. I mean, we are doing an important thing for the society as we tell stories that more people hopefully can see that if you can see it, you can be it. I think the Gina Davis Institute has really put that very clearly out there, and that it actually is possible to do it if you go together. And you just have to start off with, like Dr. Emilia said, so well
doctor.
put.
No, you really
that you have to start off. You have to start off by deciding that it's 2021 and it's just time to start doing. So thank you so much for sharing. We will have the conversation on our website, where we also will have the report that is explaining how women of color and women of age has it in the film industry, and it's sfi.se. And Emilia and Effie, you have just made our day. So thanks a lot for joining.
Thank
Bye.
you so much. Thank you so much. You're doing an amazing work, and yeah, we stand together.
Yes, yes,
We do it together.
Thank you
That's
so much
the
for
thing.
having me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
So now it's my privilege to introduce to you who I guess many of you already have met in several other occasions, but maybe not in his position right now. Matthijs Wouter Knol, the now director of European Film Academy just since 2021. But Matthijs, very welcome to this conversation about this topic of opening up the film industry for a greater inclusion. And you have been listening to our previous conversation with Effie and Emilia and Ylva. And just your first reaction when you heard them. I mean, you've been into this change making for a while. What did you think when you heard them?
Well, a lot of it speaks, to be honest, to my heart. I've been also had the pleasure to work with Emilia Roig already in the past year, and Effie Brown. I have heard many people singing her praises. So to see her speaking real and to feel her energy is a great thing, I think. And I think both of them say so many things that are clearly something, a reality they have been living for a long time, if not all their lives, that are like slowly, I think, also becoming aware more in the film industry, including for myself. And I think it's very important to listen to them and also to learn and to work with them as well.
Yes, and it's. I think it's very interesting that we are now in a position where we are doing these conversations, and you and I have met within this work quite a few times now, but it is quite recent. I mean, you started off in Berlinale in 2008, and previous you were at IDFA, and you yourself have done a great work with the EFM within Berlinale, but during these past 5 to 10 years, can you just, what has happened within the festival area?
Well, I think it's what has happened in the past years, and I feel that there's become an awareness just because of a couple of people speaking out, and as Emilia and Effie already said, also saying, listen, we're not going to wait, we're going to say it's been enough, and we need our voice to be heard at the table as well. I think that's one thing that has happened. I think what clearly has happened as well is that in society, a lot of things have changed. And I think when we look at what's being produced, if we see at discussions that go on in other creative industries, but also in non-creative industries, I think what's happening in the film industry is also very much a reflection of what is happening in society itself. And that's a good thing. You could say that the film industry has been rather slow maybe in replying to it, but it's a great thing that it is happening. And I think, you mentioned festivals, you mentioned markets. I've been involved in a couple of them. And for me, it was, to be honest, also a reaction on things that were said to me, things that were written to me, things that were asked to me, where I felt, actually, this is a very fair point. And looking around in the room, realizing that the points that were made were maybe to be changed. And I felt that in the responsibility that I had, that I should play a role in that as well, as good as I could, and I still do.
So that was the reason for your sort of awakening, was that the people of color, disabilities, LGBTQ+, like Effie said, and I mean, she did salute you and said, we give high five for the guys that actually help us. But it had to come from them, and you had to listen to them. Was that, or was it other white privileged people around you that woke you up?
It's a mixture, I think. When you mentioned before, I worked at IDFA as well, and at IDFA, I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I worked there. And for me, it was very much about like bringing young people into an industry that was not waiting for them. So my work has always been to bring people into a room that were not automatically invited. And I feel that's very much related to me myself as well. I think, like in that work experience, my personal experience, I mean, I am a gay man, so I also have an experience in not always feeling like the one people expected. And I think in translating that into the work you do, the responsibility you have, the options you have, has led to the work I did within Talents, but also later on the work at EFM, which I think was in that sense the most rewarding because of changes going on in society, as I said before, because of other people in the industry, yourself included, also taking up a responsibility and speaking out, and many other people, I think, as well, and forming a group and realizing that there is a possibility to change a couple of things, and that those changes are really for the better, not because we want the world just to be a more colorful place or because we have nothing else to do. But in the case of the EFM, it was very clearly also the awareness that by not opening up the industry and not creating more diversity in the industry, we would harm the industry, and it would lead to economic problems, I would say, because we would simply not reach audiences and miss basically the link to what was happening in the world around us. And I think that's still the case. And for many reasons, I think that's the main reason to talk about diversity as we do now, including equality for women, including for more visibility and a place at the table for the other people you mentioned.
If you say that you before got comments and mails from people feeling left out, do you now get mails from people that wonder what you're doing?
Well, in a sense, sorry, say it again, the last thing.
Are there people that now feel excluded that were in and now feel that they are left out?
That's a good question. I think it's not the point yet, but I think that will certainly be something that will be in effect as we see everywhere. You know, if you open up the room and you invite in new people that before have not been there, I think in an industry in which we work, in which we all fight to make our next film, to finance our new project, to make sure festivals keep on happening in good times, but especially also, obviously also in bad times, inviting more people in creates a feeling of, will there still be enough for the project that I believe in, that I'm passionate about? So I think it's a very human reaction to start wondering if this is a good development for for the work that people do. And I think it's a fair reaction in a sense, but obviously it's not a reaction that is leading us to anything. So I think by creating awareness and educating and making realize that opening up the doors for everybody doesn't mean that there has to be less, but there is actually a reason to grow a business, to create more opportunities that will lead probably also to better content or to more interesting content. And that's something that the industry will benefit from as well, with whichever angle you take it from.
And how can you open up? How can you include or be starting off doing change? Do you have any practical examples of how you can work?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say that, like, I'm learning by doing, to be honest. I'm learning by doing, I'm trying things out, I'm making mistakes myself. So in that sense, it's an interesting process and not a very easy process. But I do think, and that's also a reaction on what the previous speakers, Emilia Roig and Effie Brown, said. I think as white people in this industry, first of all, it requires the acknowledgement and the awareness that we are white people and not the standard. I think with that acknowledgement, it does take the responsibility of informing ourselves, educating ourselves, listening to other people's stories, and realizing that the world in which we grew up and have been spending like sometimes already quite a long career are worlds that are changing. And I think that also is it's necessary to inform and do that work ourselves, and not expect from Effie Brown and Emilia Roig to explain that to us and then have, you know, like an hour to criticize it and say it's not that bad. But we should inform ourselves. I think that's a very crucial thing that we as white people in the industry need to start doing. We need to create groups, I think, to sit with everybody in the industry or people not yet in the industry that want to be in the industry together at the table. Also there listen and learn and make plans together, and also acknowledge that we have an advantage as white people we have a privilege, we have more experience, we have more access to funding, we have more and an easier say in what's going to happen or not. And that brings also a responsibility to take decisions that are beneficial for everybody. Yeah. And that's I think a thing we can start with. And that's done already, but it can be done way more.
And now you're at the European Film Academy, which is really a competition of quality, it's claimed. What is your hope for the future European Film Academy Awards? What do you want to see? What does this change? What kind of effect do you want it to have?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think, for the Academy are mostly identified with the awards, as you say as well. And I think the Academy can, first of all, be much more and should be much more in the coming years to come. But to start with the awards, I think, when it comes to which films are being nominated, who is looking at the films that might have a chance to be nominated, who's part of the organization of the Academy, I think that should be reflected much more. The society in which we live and the people in the industry that we live, which is not the case yet, and that it's absolutely something that needs to change and will change in the next years to come. It will take time, but we'll work on it, and I think that's something that we have started right now.
And do you plan any changes?
Well, I think it's, if you look at other academies within Europe that are based on a similar system as the European Film Academy, which is members that can vote for winners. There's a couple of changes going on, revisions going on, tryouts going on in other academies, for example, in the BAFTA, where regulations have been changed, where selection committees and juries have been changed. And also the way people are invited to become a member has become much more of an aware process, I would say. And without saying that is the way to do it, because it's the first year, it's still to be evaluated. But I think it's interesting to follow what's happening there and then to see in which way a European Film Academy, which is obviously also different, linked to a different reality in a lot of countries all over the continent. But I think there's certainly lessons to be learned from that can inspire us, hopefully. Yeah. And
I know for being part of European Film Academy for many years, I know that decisions don't come easily. Do you feel that you have your board with you? Do you feel that you have your members with you?
Yes, I do. It's early to say, obviously, because I've just started 2 months, but I do feel that there is a dynamic within the Academy, within the board, with the support of also a new president that we have, which is the first time a female president of the Academy, with the support of the board, the chairman of the board, that are very much looking into what we can do. And I fully trust and have high hopes that in the next years to come, we will see change in that sense. So yeah, absolutely, yes. And if I can add, apart from the awards and apart from the work that needs to be done within the Academy, I think by working on a much broader scale in which role the Academy can play in putting people together at the table, bringing people within Europe together, and also, again, opening the doors for people that traditionally have not been a part of the Academy. I think that's a very important step to take. And that will have its reflection, hopefully, on the industry and on the awards that the Academy hands out every year.
Well, it sounds really interesting, and I hope you will get the message out, because everyone wants to win an award. And if they know that is what it will take, I think more production companies will try to include just to be standing on your stage and receiving an award from you. So let's hope for that. Let's hope it doesn't take too long, and let's keep up the work together. Thank you so much, Matthijs, for taking your time, and we see each other soon.
Thank you, Anna. I hope so.
Bye.
Bye.
With me here today, I'm very happy to introduce to you Ylva Habel. She's a researcher in the fields of Black studies, post-colonial and racist perspectives. Ylva, you're an author and a lecturer in media communications and science with a background in film science. And you have been one of the experts to analyze the interviews that are the basis of our report. And I'm so happy that you can join us and help the audience to see what you find are the most important findings in the report. The report is available to download, so we don't need to go through all the details. But me, myself, during my conversations with you, I have understood that you have really a new take for me in regards of how the industry takes responsibility. And I would like us to start off with the finding of the involuntarily expert in anti-racism, which a lot of respondents have been describing. Could you please just tell us what is this, and is it only in the film world that you have discovered this, or can you find it in other research as well?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be included here. To describe it really condensed, I would say that the involuntarily diversity expert is everywhere in work life, or find themselves positioned like that everywhere in work life. Within cultural areas, and especially the cases I've been looking at, these 19 interviews, you see again and again that every time a filming set or a TV production has problems regarding questions of diversity, or the discussion of stereotyping comes up, the whole set turns to this person, because it's also often only one person of a color, or maybe two. And this person is then called upon to teach everyone on the set without former preparation or anything. And I see that a lot. Also, what it does to these people of color is that it both gives them a working role that they never asked for, at the same time as it sort of deprofessionalizes the whole situation, meaning that the director, if he's white or she's white or they are white, turn to the person of color, or assume things about the person of color, and so both deprofessionalizes their own expectations, their working process, everything. And also you could say that frequently when racism is revealed in some form, all working processes are brought to a halt. And many a time these people of color, or women of color, I should say more exactly, feel obliged to just suppress their frustration or their need for action, because they know that the whole filming work and the whole set is dependent on keeping on schedule. So there are so many problems that sort of peter out from this typical situation of the involuntary diversity expert. It becomes a dangerous situation.
So if you would advise the production companies, what should they have done instead of turning to one of their cast? It's often an actress, for instance. What should they have done instead? Because they don't know, obviously.
Yeah, I think that they need to do many things. They need to read up, of course, and to widen their cultural horizons, basically, because this problem also regards questions of repertoire, questions of style in cinema and TV production, questions of narrative and genre. All these aspects are affected by the relatively narrow field of vision that we are not, I think, enough allowed to discuss or critique. So one thing would be that people within the industry, I won't point to anyone in particular, but people in the industry need to read up. Also, they need to recruit more diversity, and not just one or two, because these people are always pressured to death by everyday racism then, and will finally withdraw or end up in exhaustion or depression. There need to be structures both for reporting racism and also educating on racism, but not education in the sense that we buy into the argument that white people just don't know, because they do. And they need to address this bad faith that they pretend to be ignorant. And then if we start with such action, I think we can go on with others.
And when you say report, is it a kind of a whistleblower function, or is it a kind of, is that what you mean, or you mean something else?
Well, I think the basic thing when you're discriminated at work, that you can feel safe to report this experience of discrimination and not get it twisted or gaslighted, because that is also what specifically the actresses talk about in the report, that they are either gaslighted or sort of scared or silenced out of reporting, or they themselves didn't even think it would be worth reporting discrimination in the workplace. And that was not only racism, but also sexism of various types.
Yes, and now you are in an area which you also said they should hire more people of color. And I guess what you mean is not cost only, we will come to that, but within the production company hire. And yet in Sweden and in very many parts of the world, I guess, the whole production community is based on freelancers. And what I have read from the report, this goes together, that as of being a freelancer, you are afraid of being gaslighted because you're being a problem. Or so can you see that how can the production company, do you think that they still should employ within the actual company? Is that what you mean when you say hire?
I mean more generally to hire people of color, because every time I see this topic discussed, and mostly within the cultural sector at large, what white majorities at these working places ask themselves is, how are we going to do this? And it is no problem. There is no difficulty or no hidden complexity that we need to overcome, because when it comes to men and women, I think most people know that many problems, but not all, can be solved by simply hiring women. And the same should go for people of color. And it's almost too obvious to say, because it's a given. If we're just sitting outside waiting, hoping to be included in society, and only one at a time here and there gets included, we're not going anywhere. And as I will argue later, maybe if we have time, this is a problem for democracy.
Yes, and we will come to that. I will just pass through what is also found in the report, the problem of stereotyping, which is usually worked into the scripts, and it's worked into the casting situation. And so my first question would really be, do you think that the stereotyped filmmaking could be avoided by having people within the company that could see it all much earlier, or do you think that that is a vain idea?
I think that in order to avoid stereotyping, in a larger perspective, diversity needs to be represented by co-workers at every level in the industry, including casting. Because white expectations in casting then tag on to a very white and stereotypical manuscript, for instance. And it's very hard to unhinge it when it has gone that far. And also stereotyping keeps both society and film and media culture in their place. This is a huge simplification, of course, but that is the result of the inner workings of reproducing stereotypes.
And so stereotyping, for me, stereotyping is, one part is quality. With stereotypes, I don't see that a film can reach a high quality because you're using too easy tools to tell your story. But what would you say? What are the consequences of stereotyped films showing a world which is dominantly white and with white people with power? What would you say is the most dangerous thing about that?
There are many dangers. Some of them are everyday, about killing people's humanity or dehumanizing them, killing people's spirit and their hope for being their hopes or prospects of being a full human being. If society sees you as a set of stereotypical traits, then that concretely limits your life chances, so to speak. And also historically, from a larger perspective and ideological perspective, we have seen many a times how oppressed groups have been stereotyped as a first step to dehumanize them, to make them more vulnerable for harassment and finally genocide. So it is like a ladder. On the internet, you can find like pyramids of the different steps of stereotypes and also of racism, the various steps from everyday insults, which white people tend to think are only result in hurt feelings. But from insults to genocide, there is a structure, a way that leads from one step to the next. And that is presently what we see becoming normalized in Europe and the world, I think.
Thank you for helping us to write this report, and we will get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.